We're live.
We're live, partially live. Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
Are we still throttled on all of our own pages?
Yeah. What I need you to do, Tim. We'll figure this out after the show because I think I got a solution to it. It'll
Okay.
just require you not to also be banned. That's all you got to
It
do.
needs what? Say
It,
that
you
again.
you'll just also not you'll not need to make sure you're not banned. That's all you need to do.
Okay.
Because me, troublemaker on Facebook posting about rye bread, can't
Yeah.
just can't
I,
stream
I am
anymore.
definitely
It's
a
my
troublemaker.
rights got to be taken away. Because I'm just posting too many radical things. It's got to be it.
Well, you're wild, man. You're just wild. You know?
That's what it is. Facebook. That's why they're censoring me. It's just I
Yeah.
speak the truth.
Because you are a rebel, man. You've got to learn to take it easy.
Yeah. No promises to tone it down, folks. Um,
Fire.
that's right.
Kevin, fire.
Just the truth here. All right, so we got, gosh, we're gonna probably have an intense show because we're gonna be talking about the Hamas attack on Israel. Like it's an awful thing, but we gotta talk about it. It's what folks are talking about, and it's gonna definitely gonna shake up policy in the Middle East, shake up things in the Middle East, and possibly here in the United States too. And gosh, I put in the title, Hamas attack brings out ugly American politics, because boy, it sure has. The worst
It's
people are out, and
Yeah. I got a lot that I want to say. Like a lot of it's emotional based. I want to save it for the show. You
yeah,
know, it gets tough to get into the fact based narratives, but okay, we can do a little bit of that too. We can talk
yeah.
about it.
Yep. So we'll talk a bit about that. We'll quickly cover what it is, and then we'll go into like the political analysis side of that, and then we'll shift to the more fun, weird stuff like RFK Jr. running as an independent, and me getting a phone call from a, I presume, Democratic polling firm. So I'm going to talk about that. What I said.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we'll talk about some of that stuff. And of course, if you folks listening out there, wherever you may be listening, have anything to contribute to the conversation, let us know. Leave your comments. We'll gladly share them on the screen. Uh, but we're going to go live in about 10 seconds. 4. Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing okay, man. Doing okay. Thanks, folks, for joining us here on WYSL and all of the live streams that we are able to get access to still. Our YouTube streams, our Facebook group stream, and Twitter. Um, and yeah, so we're gonna talk about the current events, Tim. We gotta talk about
Yeah.
stuff. We're gonna talk about Hamas, and then if you're like, oh, this is a pretty heavy topic, and you're ready for a palate cleanser, we're gonna talk about more fun stuff at the end, as we often do. And this show, last segment, that's the weird and more fun news. But
Yeah.
we gotta talk about what happened
We
with
we
Hamas
do.
and
We
Israel.
do. It's a big deal, Kevin, and it's very depressing. And I guess because it had been, I guess, reasonably quiet for a while, I had kind of hoped um, that the violence between Israel and Palestine had somewhat abated. And I guess, unfortunately, here we have a situation where over 900 Israelis are dead, um, and and the Israeli response into the Palestinian territories is, um, you know, powerful, epic. There's
Yeah,
so many problems. I I guess the first thing I want to say is when we see things like this and we see people automatically taking sides, and I'm sitting here saying I'm just so anti-war that I you can be offended that I don't want to automatically condemn every Palestinian to a glass parking lot. Like, be offended by
yeah,
that. Go ahead, okay? But there's a reality here that this cycle is now guaranteed to continue. And yeah, okay, looks like Hamas started it. I get it, right? You
Yeah.
you you're a
Well,
historian. You're better with the stuff than me. Would you, you know, break some of this down for
yeah. I
us?
mean, like it's messy, and again, this is a conflict that's going back, at least 100 years. Usually, people talk about 1917 and the Palestine Mandate and everything, like with the British kind of resettling, Jewish refugees in that area, and eventually culminating in the state of Israel in the 1940s. Um, so, like, because people talk about that, but this particular attack, again, we'll jumping forward to today. If you listen to and look at like what it is, and unfortunately, like, Twitter has been like just awful to look at. Like, really, I had to stop looking at like the brutality of what Hamas did is just awful, right? Like, again, like, just beheading people, killing people who are like, who are just like attending a concert, like beheading babies. Like, it's just like it is it's bad. It's really bad. Um, and I don't know how anyone can justify this type of thing. Um, it's it's not exactly like coming out of nowhere. Again, this conflict has been going on for a while. The Israeli government are not always the good guys in this situation too. They've not to this exact level, but they've had their own kind of more polished, brutal authoritarian policies that are the results of some of these like things happening in the past, right? They're in part to respond. Everyone's like responding to each other, right? It's
Yeah,
escalation after escalation, and that this is unfortunately the type of things that happen when you get in a cycle of war, where you have like these rocket attacks coming from Hamas, or they're worried, what if Hezbollah, which is kind of an affiliated group up in Lebanon, start sending their rockets in, and all these like organizations who are determined to now not really have a two-state solution, but really to eliminate the state of Israel, to reconquer it in the name of Palestinians. And that's how like a lot of these groups feel about it, right? Like, and I know the counter to that is like Gaza, they would claim is like an open air prison, and it's, yeah, I get it. Like, the Israelis are not exactly perfect in that sense, but and by not perfect, I mean they have their own bad policies, and the stuff that you see coming out of Israel now too is in its own way awful, but it still doesn't justify this type of attack. And so, like, yeah, the Israeli government is going to respond with, quite frankly, things that are war crimes. They've responded with, we're going to cut off water. They've talked about all Palestinians as animals. Um, and again, the Gaza is an area with 2 million people in it,
yeah,
most of whom are not necessarily like don't want to be involved in this conflict. They're probably horrified by the same thing and know that the Israeli government is going to react, or perhaps even overreact to this situation. It's going to put their lives and livelihoods in danger. Um, and you can't help but wonder, like, why on earth would Hamas care so little about the people in their area, knowing darn well that the Israeli government is going to react in such a way? And then why would the Israeli government, instead of taking the moral high ground, which they have done before, again, they've gotten punished for taking the moral high ground against like, honestly, evil people, and I don't say that too often, but like, honestly, evil people, they've gotten punished for this, and it's resulted in the death of tens of thousands of Israeli citizens too. But then Israel goes back and they bomb and they do their own stuff, and again, cycle after cycle after cycle. Like, Tim, when you talk about being anti-war, like, I think about this conflict and how like generations can you get caught up in this. And I talk to people, I've talked to people who are like who've lived in Israel, who like they aren't they're people who have fled situations like Iran. They're Jewish, folks of Iranian descent, went to Israel, found a safe haven there, and they feel like, hey, this is the only place I can make my home, and they get caught up in that same cycle of violence. And
it's it is this ongoing, forever kind of cycle of violence, and there's an issue too. Like, they can't immigrate and assimilate into Israel. They can't go out into the rest of the Arab world. They're held against Israel like a sword against their throat. And Israel treats them like crap, and the rest of the Middle East treats them like crap and keeps them there. They limit their ability to produce goods and services because they're such a threat to Israel that
yeah,
it's oppression, but it's not just oppression by Israel. Israel's trying to defend itself, but the Middle East uses the Palestinians. They use them. They inhibit their freedom. They won't let them move out of there. They not that the economy is that much better. It's an oil-based kind of situation over there. So it's not a manufacturing-based thing. It's not a service-based economy. There's not jobs for them to move away from Palestine to in the rest of the Arab world. There's
Yeah.
war-torn religious ideology everywhere you look. And so it's a disaster for me. And I don't know why. I guess I don't know why it doesn't lead more people to be going like, look, somehow we've got to stop these wars. And
Yeah, I
I
mean,
know,
lots of people do say that. Like,
yeah,
it's just that the
yeah,
absolute worst people, unfortunately, are able to drive enough others to continue conflict. Right? Again, most people, and I include Palestinians living in Gaza, Palestinians living in the West Bank, and Israelis, all over. Right? Jewish Israelis, Arab Israelis. Most people are like, "This is terrible. We want to stop doing this." But
mhm.
there's again the worst people who end up controlling a population through violence, doing things like like the things that Hamas does with Gaza. Again, like they've gotten money, they've gotten aid, they've gotten resources. They could have chosen to have actual independence, and instead the worst people decide to infuse their religious ideology and act upon it against Israel, and dedicate all of their resources to that, because the war does this. War chews up all the resources, all the wealth that a society creates, and dedicates them to something destructive. And that's exactly what Hamas has chosen to do in Gaza, and to a lesser extent in the West Bank too. But it's a somewhat less extreme situation, but nonetheless, like this is a choice that likely a minority, although it's like close to 50-50 depending on what polls you look at, have chosen to make in these areas, that religious ideology, and nationalism supersedes um, wealth building and success. Um, and then so and then the Israelis are, again, they're responding in their own defense, but war is an ugly thing, right? Even if you think a war is justified, I've talked about this too. Like, war turns every nation, even a nation like that has a legitimate claim to defense in the moral high ground at the beginning. It turns everyone into monsters. That's
And when you go to Twitter, that's what you're seeing. That there's a
yeah,
lust for blood, there's a lust for vengeance.
yeah,
And look, man, like I said on the last show, there's a piece of me that isn't afraid of violence, that understands that I'm a violent. It somewhere in my soul, there's the ability to do violence, right?
yeah,
So I know that if I was in Palestine and Israel had oppressed and limited our ability to trade, that there's a good chance, and that someone I had known or part of my family had been killed, that I would focus my rage at them.
yeah.
And
You'd
if
be
I
you'd
was
be
in
angry.
Israel, if I was an Israeli and rockets were constantly flying into my world, my spear, and I knew that this sword was poised at my throat and that it was a symbol for the entire Arab world and their hatred for me, I know that I would feel just like an Israeli. I know it. Like I would get
Yeah.
caught up
And
in
so
it.
you
I
get
get
these
caught up
people who
in
are
stuff
like,
now.
yeah, you're like, yeah, of course. Like, sorry, like the some of the Israelis, like, yeah, we've just got to like destroy these people, right? Like they're
Yeah.
savages, and they you get in that mindset again, and that's a mindset where you're likely to do something horrific, and the Israeli government is about to dive into a horrific conflict now. But before we jump into how this has gotten a response from American politics. We got a question from John right at the beginning on
That was a
YouTube.
good
Says,
question. Yeah.
"Is this another example of U.S. funding both sides of a conflict? Thoughts and prayers to the victims." Uh, yeah, sort of. So first of all, yeah,
Always.
it's mostly it. So this isn't. It's not exactly a secret that the U.S. like gives a lot of military aid to Israel.
A lot.
It's yeah, like quite a bit. Now they're not in a situation like Ukraine is, right? Like they're not exactly the underdogs in this fight. Like something awful happened to people in Israel, but they're not the underdogs in this fight. Um,
True.
but that's in part because the U.S. has been giving a significant amount of aid to Israel for decades, right? Because
Yeah.
we've the American government and American foreign policy has seen Israel as like a secure foothold in the Middle East, of like, hey, this is going to be our one friendly country that allows us like access to some of this other stuff in the region.
If we need it, we have military bases there. Certainly, their governing system is a better governing system than what we see in the rest of the Arab world or much of the Arab world. It's a I want to call it a democracy, but I don't think it's actually
Yeah,
like
well,
a great,
it's a
arguably a democracy, right? So
parliamentary republic,
yeah, yeah, okay,
yeah,
fair
so
enough.
that's
We'll
what it is.
define
And
it as best we can. And certainly, it would be nice if they could be not looked upon with animosity and hatred, but as a way of governing in that area that is successful. A lot of their success, though, does depend on well, they have good science, they have good technology, but they also do rely on the United States for a lot of their foreign aid, lethal aid, and ability to respond like in this situation, their ability to make war, their ability to defend themselves, and so yeah, I get it, man. I do. Like I said, if I was a Palestinian or an Israeli, I get it. I get where everybody's coming from.
yeah,
I want there to be less hate in the world, though. That's what I want.
yeah, and just to put a number on the Israeli side, it's 3.31 billion in 2021 and 158 billion overall, roughly, in foreign aid to Israel. Just to put a thing on that, but John was asking about funding both sides of this too, so I want to address that one because there's this
Sure.
thing where Iran very well likely did something to support um Hamas in helping to carry out this attack, right? Providing some sort of material aid. And so the narrative goes that the uh the US gave $6 billion to Iran. It's not quite as neat as that. Right?
Right.
So, well, like, what the actual thing is, it wasn't like the US is like, "Oh, we're gonna just give them $6 billion this year." No, it was, we negotiated with terrorists is what we did. We unfroze some of their sanctioned assets that were stuck in, like, South Korean banks who want to comply with US sanctions, and because we unfroze those assets, $6 billion was transferred to Iran, as part of a hostage deal because they had taken some American hostages, and that was what the American government agreed to do, is to release some of that funding in exchange for getting people back. Um,
Right.
so
Which
that's
is a
what it is.
normal way of doing diplomacy. It's a normal thing. Some of that money was tied up by us. They had earned it through sales of oil, and we sanctioned it because of their theocratic regime and its proclivity towards violence, right? So who gets hurt by that? Arguably the people in Iran and not the Iranian government. And that's where I get to in this situation. I think that
Yeah,
there's people in Palestine that don't want their friends and family to die. There's people in Israel that don't want their friends and family to die. And regardless, the governments of those two places, Hamas is a substantial piece of the Palestinian government, and Israel
yeah,
wanting
in
to
Gaza.
defend itself. We have two governments invested in making people fight forever.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's fair.
unfortunately,
I mean,
and it,
maybe that's not fair. Walk me back. I don't care. I get it.
yeah,
I'm
and so
emotional.
I wouldn't again, I wouldn't say it's like necessarily like we're invested in making them fight, but like our again, because I mostly go back to like, I mean, it could be some of this like from an American policy perspective, but most of it is, well, we've got to help Israel because they are the one representing the parliamentary government, Republican form of government in the Middle East. So like
Yeah.
we've got to help them out and help them like be good and help them survive. Okay. And so like it's a kind of realpolitik like foreign policy position to do that, right? That's where it
Yeah.
comes from. Again, which is I can be and have been critical of. I mean, it's real politics, it's power politics, but it's also like liberal democratic politics too, where you want to support a democratic government. And then on the other hand, too, like the United States has given like Since April 2021, the United States has given about $500 million in assistance to Palestinians. A lot of it was like COVID aid, a lot of it's humanitarian assistance, is it
Right.
USAID stuff. Um, so like giving a lot of money there, and unfortunately, like you want to do the right, assuming that foreign aid is a good idea, like, and this happens a lot, you want to do the right thing. You want to help people. You want to help people who are in a bad situation. Those people, most of those people aren't in that situation because they chose to be. They just happen to grow up there and they have jerks that are running their governments. The
Mhm.
goal is to help them. And then what ends up happening though is those resources are taken and they're not distributed in a fair or equitable way. They are uh, used to prop up their own power, and those resources that the government might have spent buying food or providing aid or building infrastructure are just redirected into more weapons to attack, their
Yeah.
religious
Um,
enemy.
I think. Do we have time for me to take a cheap shot at Israel's gun control policy? Like, how are we
Yeah, we
doing on
got
time?
like 2 minutes, but yes, you
All
can
right.
do that.
So, one of the things that happened immediately after this attack is that um, the Israeli government freed up access to Israeli-owned weapons, and they have a pretty stringent gun control policy. People can't have weapons in their house, and I can't imagine. I can't imagine that Israelis, by the promise that their government could keep them safe, without them each having their own personal ability to choose to defend themselves. And
Yeah.
I just want to point that out. Like, this
Well,
is a
and
dangerous
what's
time.
interesting is like they have mandatory military service over there, right? Like everyone
Yeah,
serves in the IDF, like almost everyone.
almost
Um,
everyone. Yeah,
Yeah, like it's very few don't serve, and so like everyone is trained and they understand how to do this, and so like unlike like say Switzerland, which has strict gun control, but you're able to keep your rifles in your house, like they don't do that in Israel. Not that it would like necessarily stop or fully prevent all these attacks, but yeah, it's sort of surprising given how they are constantly under threat that they wouldn't be more of a pro self defense culture. They very much just don't think that that's necessary. Or at least it's kind of shifting now, but they didn't think it
yeah.
was necessary. And like the IDF like has this, right? The Iron Dome has this. Their missile
Authoritarian
defense or
regimes.
rocket defense system.
It lends itself for me to believe that Israeli has an authoritarian streak to it. The Israeli government, and we know Benjamin Netanyahu
Yeah.
promising safety that he can't deliver. I mean, there's things that we have to be concerned about here.
No, I mean, yeah, no, there's definitely a little bit of that there. Again, like their government and their politics have their own messiness about them, and they have their own authoritarian streak, both internally and externally. So it's messy. Again, there's no clear cut like good guys in some of these situations, right? Like sorry, like no one's gonna be perfect. And like we have to expect that and sort that, and we don't have to like fully commit to a side, like
Right.
wholeheartedly. Like we don't. Um, I think we can be against evil acts regardless of where they come from.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I want easier solutions. How are we doing on time now? I think
We
we're
we are out of time for this segment. Thanks again, folks, for joining us here on WSL for a free solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
is me asking you if we're almost out of time completely unprofessional for a radio show? I don't
No,
know.
it's
Like,
fine. Like
it
if we
seems
were doing an actual radio show, there would have been music playing, and Bob would have been yelling in my ear, "Kevin, wrap it up, wrap it."
yeah. Come on. I don't want to
All
cut
right,
you
man,
off.
come on, you gotta go. I'll loop it again. Done that before.
Yeah.
Like, no, Bob, I gotta make my point.
And for our viewers, you're going to understand my take on this. There that the declining value of the dollar and people's ability to purchase things, it increases this layer and level of poverty worldwide, where already scarce resources are now even more expensive through the gods of scarcity manipulating our money supply, and I just feel as though that's why this came back, or at least part of why Hamas was able to motivate enough people to attack Israel, because there's a real, like, inflation is devastating and people don't realize it. It's
Yeah.
it's something that they miss. They're just like, hey, Yeah, we're mad. We're mad that our gas is more expensive. We're mad that our house is more expensive. We're mad that our taxes are more expensive. We're mad that our food is more expensive. But we don't really get that that is a tool of the government and it's stealing from us and it's creating scarcity and it and they're using it to blow each other up and blow up weapons in Ukraine and Russia. It's just wild to me.
Yeah.
It's just wild that more people don't get it. But I know you guys get it. I know on some level. And I may not state it perfectly, but that's a real issue for me, a real thing that we should be focusing on, that poverty is brought on by gods of scarcity. And if we could fix that, I think we'd go a long way to fixing a lot of hate in the world, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great. All right. So I here's what I think we're gonna do. I think we're gonna go jump back into the show. I'm gonna read some of these comments on the radio show. And we'll talk about
Yeah,
those, and then we're gonna jump into how Republicans and the absolute worst leftists have responded to this too. Um,
sure.
and yeah, so we're gonna go back in 10 seconds.
All right.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and we're fighting. We're literally fighting for freedom. We're trying to change people's minds and hearts just a little bit. Like I think we both understand that this was a horrendous event and that there's some justifiable anger, palpable anger, some tangible anger at the Palestinians, and that
Yeah.
trying to pass it off on Israel after this is not going to be an acceptable way to communicate this situation. But I I've seen some horrendous takes from people, and I think that I don't want to say they're exemplary of a wide swath of the population, but I think it's enough of the population that we need to be concerned. So
Yeah.
now I'm going to kind of throw it back in your lap. And what do you got? You know?
Yeah, you set up like horrendous takes from people. I was gonna read comments from folks.
Oh,
Tim is not talking about your
am not talking
takes.
about
We're
you
we're gonna
guys.
talk about because I want to get again, if you're listening on WYSL, like this is pre-recorded. So if you guys want to the live broadcasts, we do this usually Tuesday nights, sometimes Wednesdays, but usually Tuesday nights, and we take comments from Facebook and YouTube. And occasionally Twitter. And so we're gonna read a couple of those comments because we like participating in the show. That makes it more interesting. Sort of a light one from Facebook user. I think this is Brian, but imagine that jerks running our government. Yeah, imagine jerks running government. Yeah, man. Yeah, I made that comment about jerks running government, and yeah, we got them here too, just not as bad as the poor folks of Gaza do. And I want to find this other comment from I think it was also Brian who's talking about building a wall to keep people out, right? Like again, and we're gonna maybe talk about Joe Biden's wall there. I don't think like specifically like that's how terrorists get into the United States. Again, we're gonna talk about this in the context of United States politics because that's what we know best. But in terms of like keeping people out, like the wall isn't really a good preventative for keeping people who intend to do violence out because they can come in with planes, they can come in and do other things. It's in Israel specifically, they have more walls and checkpoints and border security because of their particular situation, but it doesn't apply in the same way to the United States where there's a lot of means of getting in. Temporarily that can that don't require a wall, but that's me. And again, I don't think that every I think about people like I'm forgetting the guy's name now, but Justin Amash's dad, who was a Palestinian. He was a Palestinian Christian, right? So he was a guy like his family was living in total destitution in like the 1940s in Palestine, a Christian over there, looking for an opportunity to get his family out, and he did, and he thrived. And his son, became a successful lawyer, and eventually a member of Congress, and eventually the only libertarian member of Congress. So yeah, for people who are trying to get out of this situation, and there's here's the other comment. So no other country in the Middle East wants those people. Like I think most of those folks are just trying to live their lives. They just don't want to be governed by jerks. They want to go to a place where they're free. They don't want to be this way. And then there's a handful of jerks who are making things awful for and doing horrendous crimes uh, over there.
Yeah,
But most people are probably like Justin Amash stat. They're looking for a better opportunity. They love to get out. And it's true though that no other country in the Middle East wants folks. Like Egypt could let people through. They could let people escape Gaza and they could go into Egypt, but they don't want to deal with it either. Um,
yeah,
and they're worried about like the blowback from Israel, or if they try to set up stuff in remote areas and operate like a military base or a camp in that area. They don't want to deal with that either. You get it. And it's a tough situation to deal with when it's right there in your face.
yeah.
Um,
It's more than that, though. I think there's the deliberate idea that they can keep the Palestinians there to use them exactly the way that they're being used as a weapon against Israel, and I
yeah,
think that that's part of the plan. Like, I feel as though it's been too long to say that it's anything other than that.
yeah. I mean that could definitely be part of it. I mean it's certainly historically been the case. Like a lot of countries in the Middle East are starting to like be okay with Israel, at least on the surface, in part because of U.S. pressure too. I mean, Saudi Arabia, not that they're a great example, but they're more like we need to ally with Israel because like they are a good counterbalance to help us against Iran. Like that's their whole like thing. Again, they're
Sure.
they're playing like real politics too and power politics over there.
We got we we've
It's
got
messy.
another comment that I'd like
Yeah,
to bring up, and
yeah. Bring it up.
I do where'd it go? Yeah, you can't, and it's again from a Facebook user. Kevin and I got in a little bit of trouble on Facebook, so we don't quite have the great communication skills, um, but we still have our friends joining us. We just don't know who they are. But you can't stop holy wars, no matter how people try. You can only protect yourself from being a victim the best you can. Um, and there is definitely a palpable religious element. I would say, especially to Hamas's hatred of Israel, and
Yeah,
it's one of the reasons why want I respect people's religion and respect people's rights to be religious, but I don't want religion to be part of my government, right? Like Christian ideals are some of them are fundamental to the notion of freedom and free will, and I think those are important and a basis for our governing doctrine. But when we get to the heart of religion, it has created a lot of problems throughout the years. Let's say to be fair to everybody.
yeah.
So thanks for that comment. It's a good
Yeah,
comment,
it's a,
and
it's a good
it's
comment.
important.
I mean, yeah, again, like it's tough to start that. I think the number one is just finding ways to defend yourself. That's it's a big part of it. And yeah, so I'll just other folks and Shelly on YouTube. Thanks for or Patricia. I'm sorry on YouTube. Thanks for being here. Killing children is always wrong. Yeah, 100%. Again, and that kind of segues a little bit into you know we'll start with the left side first. Like there's like kind of a group who like they see themselves as being anti-colonial. I've seen this because I've interacted quite a bit with like lefties in the Rochester area. They're generally pro-Palestine, right? And like the nice side of their argument is that the Israeli government does a lot of oppressive things that makes it difficult for Palestinians to just live their lives, right? Because of like the system of control. They would phrase it as apartheid, but the system of control that Israel sets up in the name of their own self defense.
Sure.
If I'm being nice to the Israeli side, and I'm trying to steel
Look,
man both of these here.
I
Um,
think it's fair, Kevin. Let me just if I just want to encourage you. Like I think it's fair to be critical of Israel on
yeah,
occasion. Like we can't not be just because this happened. I think it's fair. So
yeah, no,
please go.
I agree. And again, this the Israeli government is still a government. I think we've talked about like they're about to go commit some war crimes if they haven't already. In this
Yeah,
conflict, it's going to be bad. It's going to be ugly. They're going to commit their own atrocities. And in the reason why I wanted to bring up Patricia's comment though about killing children is always wrong. That was part of it. Like they went to these kibbutzes and they slaughtered entire families. Like again, like
yeah,
literally beheading babies, like raping women. Like it's really horrific. And you got these lefties who are like, "Oh, this is what resistance looks like. What what do you expect? Like this is how you resist colonialism." You got like
Mm.
I doing like I gotta make sure it's not like a fake account or something, but there's like a BLM Chicago account that like, you know, said like this is it, and it's a picture of like the guys on paragliders came coming in, or not pictures, like a silhouette of a person on the paragliders, the motorized paragliders, and what that's in reference to is people came in on paragliders, landed at a concert, and started slaughtering people and then parading their bodies through the street. And that's what you're gonna share. My
Yeah.
goodness, like what the heck is wrong with you? If you think like, oh, this is just like we're gonna celebrate this, we're gonna talk about like this is how like we resist colonialism. What is wrong with you? Like I'm angry with these people on the left who like I think like because again I think a lot of the Palestinians have like good points. They have legitimate grievances against the Israeli government. Like I get it. I'm
Sure.
sympathetic to that, but like to look at this situation and just kind of brush it off and like, ah, yeah, but Israel's bad. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like this probably sets the Palestinian cause like back a ton. Again, like what's going to happen is Israel is going to overreact to this situation. You know that the poor folks in Gaza and and eventually like other Palestinian areas like the West Bank as well. They're going to uh they're gonna like have demonstrably worse lives, and many people are going to get killed. Like, I mean, there's already like a big bombing in Gaza. There's a whole like city block leveled, and they do this because Hamas like they hide their guns and they hide themselves in schools and hospitals and stuff. This is what they do. They're awful folks, and the Israeli government says, "Oh, we're just gonna blow this stuff up." And yeah, like how could you possibly defend this stuff? How could you possibly defend like escalating a war? Like it doesn't even make sense if you're on the side of Palestinians. Like what Hamas did doesn't make sense. Like I don't know why on earth they thought that this would further their cause other than radicalizing a handful of people to like join them because the Israeli government radicalizes them through like wanton violence. But like why? I don't know. I'm angry with like the Americans who are like just too stupid to like call out like atrocities when they see it. You don't have to pick a side.
We have convinced a lot of people that they're way smarter, that they believe they're way smarter than they actually are. That these people have do- taken on identity politics to a whole new level. That they're invested in hate. That they're so invested in hate and they're so invested in false narratives and unnuanced positions and emotional responses to demands from people who want their attention and want their vote, that they take it to the next level. And like you're saying, Kevin, I find it reprehensible. Okay. Now, there are some pro Palestine protests. I want them to be respected. Okay. There's going to be pro Israel rallies. I want them to be respected, but I want this to lead to peace. And what
Yeah.
this act of violence, these acts of violence, is ensuring in another generation is going to know the pain of loss from religious extremism and hate. And so, how do we break that cycle of violence? Right, like arguably, who knows what the real answer is because domination hasn't worked, limitation hasn't worked, and oppression hasn't worked. None of that has worked. Right, so and at the root of it is a power structure that needs these things to go on to maintain their power. That's my
Yeah.
argument. My anarcho-capitalist argument is that there's governmental pressures to keep these things going on forever.
Yeah. I mean, it might be like your government. If government is fundamentally like the warlord saying they're going to protect you and hurt the other guy, then that's a reason to keep being in war. It's a uniter. And unfortunately, that's a cheat code that awful people have found to get people to do bad things.
Sure.
And again, to that end, we're seeing a little bit of that war fever go on in Republicans. Not as bad as I was worried, but like I think there's going to be some pressure for the United States to get involved, and I think there's more pressure on the right flank to support the state of Israel
Yeah.
in this conflict.
They
So
they
like
were
that. Go ahead.
sorry, they were doing a great job. Some of the guys on the right were saying, "Hey, like this Ukraine thing looks like a boondoggle. It looks like a never-ending war, and they were hitting those libertarian talking points of, hey, I'm not sure there's a win here. Or what's our exit
Yeah.
strategy? They were saying things like things that I appreciated, and now it's code words of Israel has its right to defend itself. But I
But
think that
yes,
that may
but
be an excuse excusing Israelis' ability to go too far, and I'm concerned about that.
yeah, well, and again, like this may be another conflict where we escalate U.S. aid to this situation. We
Hmm.
provide like, and in this case, there isn't like the risk of like we're not worried as much about like maybe we should be, but like we're not worried as much about like blowback from this situation, right?
Sure,
As we are from like Russia like attacking a nuclear power and getting involved in the conflict directly. Like if the Israelis like ask for our help, like we've already moved like ships in that region to help with stuff if called upon, right?
hmm
So like we could
the
get
USS
like
Liberty is on its way there, Kevin, right now.
oh goodness, deep cuts. Um yeah, I'll let you guys
Google,
figure that one out
Google
yourself.
USS Liberty for more
Um
information.
but anyway, unfortunately, I don't have time to expand on like what I was gonna say here. For my WYSL audience, if you want to listen to that, you're gonna have to subscribe to our podcast. Thanks again for joining us here on WYSL for a free solution. We're gonna be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. Um, no, I mean, I was just I was just gonna say on like the right flank getting involved in like the case for getting involved in Israel is way worse than the case for getting involved in Ukraine. Like like again, not that there's a good bulletproof case for getting involved in Ukraine, but in
Right.
Ukraine you can say, okay, this is like a clear defensive war. There's the sides are a little bit less murky, and you're hoping that this weakens a regional superpower who's been aggressive and threatens the peace and stability of Europe, right? Like that's what you hope.
Sure.
Where these Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been going on for decades. We've been in a Middle Eastern conflict that we did not fully understand before, that people didn't appreciate our involvement in. That was Iraq. Like that's what we got mixed up in. We've gotten mixed up in Iraq and Syria. We don't want to be there. It's
Yeah.
bad news, and there's no good outcome for us doing that. And Israel is fairly capable of defending itself, right? Like the
Yeah.
trick on the United States side is going to be like convincing Israel not to like turn Gaza into glass. Like and I it sounds like I'm being glib about that, but like I'm from what I've seen today, I'm serious again. Like they're talking about cutting off water, gas, electricity, and just bombing the hell out of like Gaza, which is a region of like 2 million people. They
Yeah. No, they cut off water and they
yeah,
cut
they
off
did,
electric.
which
It's
again is pretty sure war crime.
well, it
So
punishes who's it punishing? It's
it's
it
collective punishment, right? Like
yeah. It's collective punishment on a people that really had no part in it. Like, and I know that there's the argument, right, that a lot of them are so brainwashed that they hate Israel too. I get that argument, but women, children, young men, like it's a cycle of violence, and I don't see it. I wish there was an easy solution. The easy solution is like assimilation, cooperation, but that can't happen because there's so much hatred there based on religious differences, based on occupying territories, based on history, based on cyclical generations of violence. Like it's I don't know
mhm.
if there's a fix, man. Like that's the thing. And maybe it is just maybe the fix is brutal victory by one side or the other. I
Yeah,
don't know. Maybe that's the only fix. And that's gross.
no, it is gross, and again, like that's what the people of Hamas have convinced themselves on, that the only solution is genocide and conquest, and there's a lot of people they I've seen some like rallies, even like American rallies, who are like, that's the only thing we got to do is we've got to kill all the Palestinians. That's um yeah. Shelley says that the USS Liberty. Yeah, if you just the you want to give like the 30-second rundown of what that is, and people can
Yeah,
look it up more if they want.
it's a reference to the Six-Day War when Israel wanted U.S. help and they actually attacked a U.S. carrier and blamed
Yeah,
it on, I believe, the Palestinians, and they got our help anyway. It was
yeah,
they
they
killed,
did. Yeah, they
yeah, they killed 35 U.S. Military guys in in their attack on the USS Liberty, and they originally blamed a Muslim faction for it, and it was in fact
Yeah, it was like
the
a
Israeli army that did it.
yeah, it was like a torpedo from a jet. Um,
Yeah,
so
the governments lie to us all the time. You
yeah,
know, like
no,
the,
that's the thing I was saying. Like, you're right. Most governments, they're going to they're gonna lie to you when their reputation is on the line, when U.S. aid is on the line. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
they're gonna do
Right,
shady
and
things.
it's the moral lie, right? Or the ethical lie of, well, we really needed that to save us, therefore, and to save our civilian population. So our acts are justified. And it's very, very governmental. Most people don't operate like that in their real lives.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Patricia said, World War III. My child will not fight in this war. I'm running to the hills. Damn it, in either situation, right? We got like a two front potential World War III situation going on in both Ukraine and in Israel too, because the Israeli Palestinian conflict could spiral out of control too. That's always the worry.
Sure.
That everyone decides to jump in because Russia, could decide to like have a stake in it too, even though they've been trying to be nice to Israel lately.
Yeah. Um, yeah, look, Patty, I share your concerns. My my youngest child, my son is graduating from high school. Um, the timing is terrifying for me. Terrifying, you know.
Yeah,
Just gotta be, I guess, gotta put it out there, you know. He's
yeah,
already even talked about signing up for the military, and I'm like, no, just
mm,
no,
yeah,
you know. And ultimately, it will be his decision down the road, but I would advocate against that. Yes.
yeah. Um, absolutely. But
And look, I'll go. I'll go instead of him. I'll go. You know, like that's it. If there's a draft, I'll go instead of him. You know, like I don't care if that's the choice. But that's a choice forced on me by government, and there's ways for us to not end up there. And let's hope we figure that out. Like the broken window fallacy of the military industrial complex. Let's throw that out the window. Let's take that calculation out of our GDP. Let's stop having leftists and rightists both agree that all the money that we send to Ukraine is some of it's benefiting American companies. Like, can we just stop that narrative? Because it blackens my soul when I hear it from people. Okay, what you're talking about is lethal aid and weaponry. All right. Let's 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 not
yeah.
have that conversation, you know?
Uh, yeah, so I'll say this again. This is going to be a nice long conversation for the break, and then we'll jump into lighter context. Like I think about people like Austin Peterson, who's on. He's a guy who was trying for the Libertarian presidential nomination back in 2016, but he's been like he's not quite on a neocon tear, but he's been on a pro-Israel like attacking Gaza tear
Sure.
today, right? And his criticism of libertarianism and like the anti-war faction libertarianism is that sometimes peace and safety require violence. That
It's true.
particularly in a situation like Israel, like the his argument is that if they want their people to stop getting slaughtered, if they want their own prosperity and safety, it requires extreme violence. And that is untenable from a libertarian principled anti-war standpoint or a pacifist standpoint. So what do you say to that, Tim?
On some level, I understand it. Like I even made a reference to it. Like maybe the only solution is the utter destruction of one's enemy here. But the problem is if we got honestly right, like the anacro capitalism, he says, if we got rid of the governments here and the religious influences here, and we opened up opportunity, but that would require a sea change, a level change that we just doesn't look possible in the Middle East, Kevin, right? Like it
Yeah,
doesn't look possible. So, I, arguably, there's a point in there. I just don't want to endorse the point, right? Because that point is disgusting. But it's not his fault, and he's not necessarily wrong. It's just I have to remain, but I'm anti that. So
yeah.
let's try to find a different solution. I sometimes I don't think my answers are complete enough, but I don't care. Like that's the right answer. There's got to be a different way. There's got to be.
Yeah. And at every opportunity we should look for that different way. It's just I think there sometimes there's a fair
What if
point that like the cost of like allowing peace sometimes ends up being too high too.
What if
I
we
get it.
ship over American-made processed food for decades into the Palestinians? Just free, send it over there. They'll get fat and lazy. We get them little handheld computers to play video games on. I think everything could be fine. Like, let's just airdrop that stuff in there.
Perfect. The solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is fudge rounds and TikTok.
Fudge
That's
rounds. Oh, that was oh man, well played.
yeah,
Fudge rounds and TikTok. It could be, something. Certainly, they need something, and the generations of being held at a sword at Israel's throat, and Israel's response to them being that sword has created a lot of angry, dangerous people.
yeah, yeah, it is. It's a mess. Uh, so folks who are joining us on online, I think we're gonna shift topics a little bit when we go back
We got it.
into the main show. We're gonna talk about like RFK. We're gonna talk about me getting a phone call. So we're gonna go back in 5, 4. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson here today, joined by Tim the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm still here, Kevin, and I've been waiting for this segment because, guys, we've got to step back a little bit. We have some exciting breaking news. Like there is actually a guy with resources who's going to be running for president. Not since Ross Perot have we seen such a threat to the power structure.
You you
Perhaps,
you perhaps
perhaps.
that's a big perhaps. So
Yeah.
yeah, folks, we're shifting topics. If you want to hear the conclusion of Tim and I's last discussion, WYSL audience, listen to the podcast. We went on for like 10 more minutes. Um, so, but yes, who is this this independent voice breaking free of the system and changing American politics as we know it?
Well, the beauty of it is he's like practically a religious icon in the political world. His name, Robert F. Kennedy.
Oh
The
goodness.
he flirted with the Libertarian Party. He's made some news. He's really, really good on long form podcasts. He talks really well. Um,
Good. Now
his
he's
voice
running
is
as an independent. We got a chance to get him on it.
yeah. Well, I'm glad that his flirtation with the Libertarian Party has ended because he's a neocon warmonger, um, quasi environmental paranoid kind of semi fascist, but also, compared to
No
Trump and
lies
Biden,
detected.
he looks pretty good. Like he looks pretty good compared to those
Yeah,
2.
we're setting the bar pretty low there, Tim. But
I know. They really
so
they're the
all
big
right,
names in politics right now, Kevin. Trump
yeah,
v. Biden.
yeah. Unfortunately, so I do think that people are hungry for another choice. We'll see
They are.
what the libertarians end up doing with that. Here's the problem for Mr. Robert Kennedy Jr. He is gonna have a lot of trouble getting on the ballot. It's just gonna be a tough thing. And that's a problem for libertarians too. Like we're gonna have trouble getting on the ballot. The libertarians are gonna have trouble getting on the ballot in New York State. Like it's gonna be a big lift. It's gonna be expensive, and so maybe our RFK has the resources to get on the ballot in enough states to actually win.
Yeah.
But it's not likely, and again, he's gonna get challenged at every turn, like, I would be surprised if he makes a serious, actual run at this, and what he's gonna do now is he's gonna test and see if he can raise enough money to do it, but
Sure.
even if he makes an actual serious run at this, I would take the under on getting half the states.
I'm with you on that. He's definitely going to have a hard time getting on the ballot. Some of the states is not as anywhere near as hard as New York. If I recall correctly, I want to say Idaho. It's like $500 and you're on the ballot. You know what I
Oh, yeah,
mean? It's
some of
just
them
like
are yeah,
yeah.
it's
Obviously, New
fairly
York. I
straightforward.
think it's going to require 45,000 signatures to get
Yep.
on as a presidential candidate, which a Larry put in the best effort at that as I've ever seen. He was asking for signatures nearly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, um, and had, collaborators and also people on his slate that were also very active in trying to get signatures. Um, and basically it came down to he I would say he didn't have enough money, right? Like
Yeah.
I got him
It's big
several
part well,
hundred.
it's money and, like, in the case of something like the Libertarian Party, you do get some support because you have other candidates who are trying to get on a ballot, US Senate candidates, sometimes local candidates that can collect those signatures if they're cross county, and things like that, but with RFK, he's gonna be solo unless he develops a party and he, like, has candidates running on some line he makes up.
Yeah,
But like that, there is an advantage to working within an existing party infrastructure because then you're not just out there on your own collecting candidates. Now, candidates and
signatures.
collecting signatures. Again, it's not impossible. You can do that with enough dedicated volunteers or with money to pay people to go out and collect signatures. Like you can do it, right? And again,
Yeah.
that's
RFK is the ideal independent candidate who is not happy with the government should prescription from the red team and the government should prescription from the blue team. But make no mistake about it, the preponderance of independents are not libertarian. They are government should, government will, and government force people. They just want it to be mellower and slightly nicer. Like that's what they are. They're also kind of, and this is going to burn some people, but I kind of want them to think about this. They're also kind of scared and they're
yeah,
also kind of weak and they're also kind of a big part of the problem. They they don't have principles. Like at the core of the Republicans, on one and at least in one part of it, there's a core of principles that smaller government is better. Not that they ever act on it. At the core of the Democrats, it's like this individual rights concept where will force we'll take our will and force you to respect everyone kind of concept. And both of those concepts in and of themselves aren't bad. It's just not real. Like they don't actually deliver on it.
right.
So, independence, you guys should are the ones that should wake up because you're arguably smart enough to see that both of those parties are lying to you, but you're still government should do these things. It's just you're waiting for the right bribe.
Right.
Sorry. Sorry,
Maybe
but that's
government
the
will work better if we switch the person in power and not
yeah,
attacking the
yeah, that's
fundamental, like, maybe government shouldn't do this thing. Maybe we should just figure it out on our own, and have the liberty to make our own decisions and empower people to improve their own lives. It is a mind shift.
it is, man. It is. It's hard to get there. It's hard to get here. Even like Kevin, and it's fair. Like I was a kind of a neocon, kind of like, all right, the US has a lot of power. We should use that power judiciously to export democracy at the point of a gun, right? Like on some level, that those thoughts entered my belief system, right? And so that allowed me to be manipulated and lied to be honest with you. And I had to deal with that cognitive dissonance that was handed to me. And I hope that what this election cycle might bring is a lot of people waking up to the fact that it's the government, guys. Like it's the government. It's the whole system of the government should do all of these things when in fact, if we narrowed its scope, it would be more effective and a lot more people would be happy.
Yeah, right. Like you could have like so if you're not an anarchist, you can have like good functional government at levels where like people want those services. Like we might have like good roads and sidewalks, like but we're so focused on a bunch of other nonsense that like we can't get like the actual things that might make sense done effectively. Um but anywho, I'm gonna shift topics a little bit because I just want to talk about something like just kind of fun and weird. I got a call the other day from a pollster, which I always like taking those calls. I can't always do it because I half the time I don't pick up my phone anymore if I don't know the number. But I was
Right.
expecting a call from someone else, so I was like, all right, well, I'll I'll, I'll see where this goes, right? So they asked they asked their questions like, all right, are you planning on voting in the 2024 elections? Definitely voting, or maybe voting, or not voting. I was like, definitely voting. Okay, great. All right. Do you lean more Republican or Democrat? Neither. That then like well, you're not planning on voting for a Republican or Democrat? No. So, but okay, but like if you had to choose Republican or Democrat, I'm like I would choose neither. I will throw out my ballot if I had to choose just one or the other. Um, and she's like, "Oh, okay, okay, got it."
That's
And so
great.
I could tell through the course of this is probably a Democratic poll because they're asking. I mean, they did ask about like, how do you feel about Joe Biden? I'm like, I don't like him. How do you feel about Donald Trump? I don't like him either. How do you feel about Kathy Hochul? I don't like her either.
Yeah, don't like any of
um,
them.
yeah, and how do you feel about your and it wasn't specific like your Democratic assembly choices. I'm like, not super thrilled about that either. Just going down
One
the
more
list.
thing to not be thrilled about. Thank you.
Yeah, so I knew it was Democratic poll in part too because they're like, okay, but are you more likely to vote to a Democrat if we take this position on abortion? Rate how you feel about this position with 1 being negative and 10 being extremely positive, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so okay, here's our statement on how we protect abortion rights. Okay, sure. Here's our statement on like how we're keeping you safe with gun control measures. I'm like 1, 0 like negative 10.
Zero. Those things are bad.
And it, like the thing was like, Kathy Hochul has kept our streets safe and reduced crime in New York State by passing like groundbreaking gun control legislation. And like again, I know that they're just looking for numbers, right? Like I don't want
Right.
to argue with this lady and not be like, no, you're wrong. Like Kathy
You're
Hochul
wrong.
is right. I mean,
No,
it's so hard, like because I know I can't give nuanced answers. Like, what's the most important issue to you? And I'm like, do I have to like just like name a category or like can I go on a 20-minute rant about zoning? Like,
could you imagine? You would say zoning, and that they're like zoning. That's not one of my choices here. I
oh,
don't zoning. What do you mean by zoning? You know what I mean? Like people don't realize these contrivances, these systems that have
yeah,
just taken away our freedom. Let's say. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think what they ended up putting down was like the economy. So
Yeah, that's
because
fair.
I was like, well, yeah, zoning, like maybe a little bit of crime stuff, but like zoning, like you Democrats chickened out on that. Like I wish you'd actually done zoning reform. Um and she's like,
Right.
okay, and like anything else, like, yeah, and also like, like economic issues. I want people to be able to like start businesses and stuff. Okay, economics is important to you. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Um
Check.
yeah, sure. Check the box.
it.
Um, and like it's interesting because like they also like were testing these messages about like immigration, about like getting tough on immigration.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, which makes sense. Like I not makes sense in terms of like I agree with it. I think the Democrats are cowards for like backing off on the immigration stuff. I know it's going to be unpopular with some of my conservative friends, but like I think they're chickens
No, I
for
get
this.
it.
And but like they're like we're they weren't virtue signaling about like welcoming immigrants. They're talking about like getting tough and like enforcing the law and like making sure that people were following the processes and stuff. And this is something we're seeing with like Eric Adams down and this in New York City. We're seeing this with Governor Hochul talking about like how we have no more room. We're seeing this with Monroe County executive candidate like Adam Bello on the Democratic side, like saying like no immigrants can and asylum seekers can like stay in hotel rooms in Monroe County.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it was interesting to see them like testing that. And they
It,
want to
it
see
was
my reaction to it.
It was all a virtue signal for them to begin with, Kevin,
It was.
because they served up a lot of phony platitudes. They found economic incentive, and they found it economically that there was a moment of where their constituents would be rewarded financially, or at least their campaign coffers and their friends would be rewarded financially. So they saw it as an opportunity. Um, Now they're realizing that it's drastically unpopular the way that it's being done, and I think that there's a solution to the immigration situation that people could be happy with. We need to disincentivize it. We need to export democracy back to Venezuela at the point of a gun. And like, like that's silly, but we've damaged their countries through our manipulations with the drug wars and things like that, allowing like and not allowing communism, but communism
Well,
becomes appealing when people are impoverished and their money supply is destroyed.
Venezuela screwed themselves up pretty good. They
They
got
did.
agency.
I blame
But
us. No,
let's
I blame us. It's the US, Kevin.
it's yeah, that is that is
Not
Russian propaganda, Tim. Um,
yeah, I love it. Yeah, all right, Russian pot. Yeah, I
uh,
accept.
yeah, but anyway, yeah. So like we got like a minute left. Just and I'll read this comment from Patricia. It's like I've done that too, Kevin. They freak out in terms of giving long answers and stuff. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that because this is a woman in a call center like who I don't even
Yeah,
know if she knows about, like the nuances is. I'm not gonna rant to her, but like I don't like being put into a box like, all right, you've got to give a 1 to 10 answer on this like statement and like on the immigration thing. I'm like, how do I tell you guys you stink without thinking like you wanna that I'm the Republican position on this. This woman was probably very confused when I was like giving some of these answers. Like, now, how do you feel about how we've done with taxes in New York State? Like, New York State has lowered taxes and the property tax cap and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, also zero. Like, you guys are liars.
0.
Stop.
You guys are horrible, overtaxed, crazy psychopaths.
um, but yeah, I like so I was just giving like opposite answers and all these things. And
You
if you're not used to hearing that, I don't know what they would have thought. But
you
anyway,
did what you
go
oh, I'm
ahead.
sorry. You did what you could to impart cognitive dissonance, and that's the best you can do.
I do. I'll just gave a very strange anomalous answer to their poll. They kind of look at that one.
It's
That
okay.
doesn't fit what we're looking for. Throw it out.
Yeah.
um, but all right. We are out of time though for the show. Thanks again for joining us here on WYSL. If you're listening online, we're gonna keep going for a little bit longer, but appreciate all of you joining us to listen to our free solution. Have a great night, WYSL audience. Take care. All right.
All right. That
Shelly,
was
sorry you never
beautiful.
get polled. Well, hopefully one day you'll get the choice.
Yeah, I was still kind of a moderate conservative or a small government legit anti-war conservative back when I got polled. And it, I got through the first three questions and I'm like, you're just like this is a push poll for Hillary Clinton. You realize that, right? And she's like, no, no, no. This is a legit. This was like a Quinnipiac or Marist poll or pollster. Like the call came in from them, and I'm like, the questions you are asking are designed to elicit answers that
Yeah.
would favor my me liking Hillary Clinton, and that I'm really sorry, but that's not going to happen. Like
Yeah.
you're not going to ever ask a question that I'm going to come back with. Oh yeah, I strongly agree with her on this. I went through it was fun, though. It was fun because I got a lot of laughs out of it.
Yeah. I mean, that they're driving me nuts with like I never got polled in like 2016, but there's so many polls that would come out and they didn't ask about Gary Johnson. It's like it's just okay. How can Gary Johnson poll well enough to get on the debate stage if you guys don't ask about him? Like what?
Yeah. There was text polls going around when I was running, and, people were getting texts, "Are you gonna vote for Peter Oberacher or" and I can't remember his name right now, but the other guy that ran, and people were sending me screenshots of "I'm voting for Tim O'Connor," and they would send me screenshots, and I'd put it up on my Facebook page. That was pretty epic. That was
Oh, that's
funny.
fun. That's a good idea if they're going around doing those polls like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like what do you do in those situations? And they're like, I'll put that you're undecided. Like, no, I'm decided. I know
Yeah.
I'm not voting for them.
Yeah, not definitely not undecided.
It's,
That
it's
guy
probably
is
how I
not
got checked in my polls. Like, oh, he's undecided. No. I didn't say I was. I'm pretty firm on not voting for Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Thanks.
Yeah. So the stench of ugly hypocrisy has raised its head once again, Kevin. Um, Joe Biden unequivocally said not 1 foot of wall is going to be built, but apparently that was a big, fat, stinking lie. Because several 100 feet of wall is going to be built, and it's because Kevin, because of the fiscal irresponsibility of the House of Representatives back when they were just signing continuing resolutions and not getting to be able to read the bills ahead of time. There was money allocated to be spent. This is his excuse, okay, guys. This is epic, okay? This guy makes a campaign promise that not 1 foot of campaign wall is going to be built. And so now they're going to build, maybe it's not a wall, maybe it's just camp, I don't know, maybe it's just
It's like
structures.
a
I don't know. I don't know what they're doing, but they're putting physical barriers in place because the money's been allocated, and God forbid he doesn't spend the money that Congress has told him to spend. That's that.
yeah,
He's
oh, we got
sorry,
to
but
do it,
that's
and
what's
we
been
also
doing.
got to waive all these environmental laws to do it, and
Only 25 or 30 environmental laws
uh,
because
20 miles.
pristine environment is going to be destroyed for this wall. And look, I don't know. There's probably a snail darter or something. Do you guys remember the snail darter? I bet Shelly and Patty remember the snail darter fiasco. We were going big into hydropower, and we couldn't just keep building hydropower dams because the snail darter is basically at the root of the entire ecosystem of the entire world. And if we were to destroy its environment, everybody in the world was going to die. So we stopped building hydroelectric back in, I think it was the late 80s because of the snail darter.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a
thank
whole
God we've
thing.
got the snail darter.
I mean, sometimes it's a thing, right? They're concerned like about like monarchs in some of the areas of Mexico because it might disrupt their migration patterns. Now, no, you're thinking they can fly, but
Well,
supposedly it could disrupt the environment.
you think that the environment finds a way, and that we're here for a limited amount of time, and that nature already has a plan to survive us, and that a little thing like a dam isn't going to stop a monarch or a snail darter. But
Yeah, I mean they're yeah, like it's the smart ones. Darwin will do his work, and the
yeah,
ones who figure out how to fly over will do that. Yeah, this isn't a case for building the wall, like because Joe Biden is a hypocrite. Like again, what kills me about this is like here's a guy who is happy to twist and bend the laws of Congress and push the authority of presidential power to spend billions of dollars for giving student loans.
yeah.
But oh, this 20-mile section of wall, my hands are tied. Sorry, Congress did this. I gotta follow the law, guys. Like,
Uh,
some I got no choice. Darn those Republicans in
oh,
Congress.
oh, shucks! I
All
can't.
right, let's waive these laws. I mean, like, because they could have said, like, nope, we're not waiving those laws. So, like, good luck building that section of wall.
And then in a year from now, he's going to be campaigning. Well, I built 50 miles of wall. That's the most that Congress would let me do. Like it,
Yeah.
it's just epic.
Oh, they're
And
testing
look,
the
guys,
messaging for it now. That's
yeah, they have weaponized the entire justice system. My man, George Santos, the
Santos.
hero,
Oh
the
goodness.
Republican hero from the third district of New York, got elected in largely. This district has been bouncing from red to blue for decades. This guy comes up with a crafty game plan. He virtue signals. Pretends to be gay, or he is really gay, or he's not really gay. He
Who
steals some
knows?
money from his friends, and now the system is his chickens are coming home to roost, or the system has been weaponized against him. I'm not sure which it is,
Against
but
George
it's one of those
Santos.
two things.
What's he being charged with again?
Oh God, his list of things that he's getting charged with is longer than Trump's, bro. It's awful. This poor guy, identity theft, credit card fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, aggravated identity theft, and it, I mean,
Stealing
there's
donors'
there's more. But
identities.
wait, there's more. He charged like $15,800 to one of his donors' credit cards in an unauthorized charge. There's this entire thing where, guys, check this out. If you don't have $250,000, the GOP has no interest in backing you as a candidate. So poor George, the gay Republican from the third district, who may or may, tech entrepreneur, gay Republican from the third district of New York, had to steal $250,000 from his friends. And like literally, he didn't even have the money. He just said,
And then he lied about what he got anyway, on top of
yeah, yeah,
allegedly like stealing all this money from his donors who were kind of generous enough to give him their credit card.
yeah, yeah. That's that. Look, it was for a greater good, Kevin. It's the same thing the government does every day. They lie to us for the greater good. George Santos, obviously, to me, he was the greater good, ladies and gentlemen, and therefore these lies and these little malfeasances, guys, in a couple of years, he'd be able to pay everybody back with interest. I don't even know why it's a problem.
Yeah,
The
he's
money
gonna get it.
rolls in when you go into Congress. It just rolls in.
All right. I mean, you know what, Tim? I got a pitch. I think like he's our man for president because you know what? Everyone's gonna know what to expect.
Yeah,
Here's the guy. Like we know he's gonna lie. We know
it's,
he's gonna
it's
steal. Like we know he's gonna defraud us. Like there's no illusion anymore. We're not gonna pretend. So we're gonna have this guy who's gonna do all this stuff brazenly, and we're like, that's why we can't give you any power. That's right.
yeah. I mean, Dianne Feinstein passed away. $231 million worth of money, like estate goods total. $231 million, making $200,000 a year, $150,000 a year. When she first got into Congress, they were making under $100,000 a year. It's just, it's just lucky.
Funny how that
I don't
worked
know.
out. How
Yeah,
so
I
many
mean,
members of Congress
like
suddenly
these.
get really good at trading stocks.
It's because
Weird.
Kevin. Yeah, they're the smartest amongst us. So not
'Cause
only
we
do
only
they
elect the best.
know what laws we need to have forced on us, they know how to pick stocks epically. It's weird. It's
Yeah.
so weird. They're geniuses, all of them.
Yeah, that's why they got elected. You know what? We only elect the smartest. That's how it works.
They're the most aggressive, lying psychopaths, but that's just me. Or people with $250,000. I guess it takes 250 if you want to buy a state senate or state assembly seat or he's actually, yeah,
It's Congress,
he's
but
Congress. That's 250K.
I mean, that it's kind of how it works. I get it.
Yeah.
Not that I get it, not that it's right, but like, yeah, the National Party, they'll start to back you if you can show that you can build enough supporters to, get enough money to make an impact on your own, and then so you got to do that, and then you've got to be in a position to actually like, win the race. Then they'll throw money behind you, but and they
Well,
make
they're only
those
going to throw
same.
money. Yeah, they're only going to throw money behind you that they can get back, right? Like
Yeah,
the,
well,
the,
that's
they're,
yeah. You
they're for
gotta.
profit organizations, guys. Like the
No,
Republican
that's
Party is.
you once you get elected, you gotta do your part to grow the party and do your thing. But
Yeah.
I was gonna say like by throwing money into your race, I mean like make one of those like stupid commercials where they put the opponent in black and white and they're like Representative so and so doesn't respect his constituents.
Yeah. Those are the best. Oh my god. But like even though I'm aware of it and I think I have a higher level of awareness, that in a way they're still effective, those commercials. Like where you're like, and then you luckily for me, when the Democrat does it and the Republican does it, I end up hating both of them, and those feelings linger. It's like, all right, the Republican told me to hate the Democrat because he's a dirty dealer, and the Democrat told me to hate the Republican because he's a dirty dealer. You
Oh,
know
they're
what?
both right.
They're both right about each other. They're both dirty dealers. I
So actually,
got
so Tim, what you probably see, because I would see this when I worked in politics and I was traveling around a lot, and I would like just like watch TV, but like when they use the exact same template across districts, it's literally the same thing, literally the same like background photos and everything. They just have like a cropped out image of like whoever the bad guy is, and they plop that in and change one word in the voiceover.
oh, it's yeah, that happened to me not that long ago where I was watching the commercial. I'm like, wait a second. I saw that last night, but it was about the other guy. When was that? Was last probably October last year where I saw that, and I was just blown away. Oh well, that's the system.
Yeah, it's just fine. It's like they change one little thing. That's the thing. It's the
Yeah,
same message everywhere. But anyway, so one last thing, but before we wrap up, um,
sure.
last week I should have made a 2 weeks to flatten the curve joke about the zombie apocalypse, and I missed it, and I'm so mad that I missed like because that's your strategy, man. That's your you're just hunkering down for a couple weeks, and you're like,
I'll
2
be
weeks to
good.
flatten the zombie curve. You're gonna be good.
I'll be all right. I'll be all right.
All right.
You know,
Anything else that you want to talk about?
the only thing that I want to talk about, but that we don't have to do it. I think just a general statement of it's worth checking out the latest polling numbers from the declining support for Army Ukraine. It's on a. It's like it's like dropping off a cliff right now, and I feel it's because of our show, Kevin. We've been critical of
It's,
our zombie warlord overlords and this proxy war that we're fighting in Ukraine, and we understand where the Ukrainians are coming from, but we're realizing too, like there's a lot of issues and a lot of money, and it's weird because when we can say, hey, Hawaii could be rebuilt for $50 billion, but we have to send another $110 billion to Ukraine, people are kind of like, hey, what's up with that juxtaposition? There's a problem with this. And it's like, yeah, there's a problem with it. And then it's like even CNN is parroting. So people are seeing Mitch McConnell say, hey, you know, these bombs create good jobs in the United States. And then some talking head on CNN, some
uh,
left-wing psycho is like, guys, like Lockheed Martin people work in the United States. Hello. And Raytheon
like
bombs are made right here, just outside of
just
Chicago and over in
like
Connecticut.
that thing like with Mitch McConnell's like it's almost parody, right? Like it because I
Oh,
saw that and I'm like, wait, like what a ghoulish argument for like because again, if you want to make the support like argument for Ukraine, like you could say again, like these are people defend themselves, they're invaded, and like this is what we're doing to like make sure that this like the Russian aggression doesn't spread throughout Europe. Okay, like
yeah.
that's certainly an argument to make that I understand as like reasonable, even if like I have some issues with that. But to just say like,
Sure.
oh, it supports jobs, like that's not a reason to make bombs and like kill people. Like that's not sorry, it's not good
So
enough.
bad.
There are lots of
It's
things that can create jobs. Like no, like no, as
no, just no. Just no. Don't say that anymore. And look, guys, our economy runs on the broken window fallacy. It goes back forever. It goes back to every war that we've ever benefited from. It goes back to bailing out the big car companies. When you throw wealth into the ocean or you use it to blow things up, if a bomb takes $1 million to make and you blow it up, and then it costs $1.2 million, we record that in our gross domestic product as a sale when we blow it up, and as a sale when we because we gave it away to blow it up.
right.
So we record that as a sale, and then when we replenish that supply of bomb for the 1.2, we record that as a sale in the GDP, and none of that does one iota of good for anyone in America. All right, like it's this mythological economic game that's it's gross and it's soulless. It's a
Yeah,
soulless
what
argument.
the government steals our money and
Yes,
then they give it to a big company like Raytheon,
blow
and
it
then
up.
they make stuff
Yeah,
and they give it away overseas and they blow it up.
yeah. They take our money
That's
and they blow it up, and then they take more of our money,
yeah,
and then they're like, "Here's another thing to blow up. Congratulations, your wealth." Your gross domestic product grew by 4% this year. And everybody's like, my milk's $7 a gallon, you
mm,
psychopath. What the hell?
yeah,
Like it's it's a great game. Guys, we live in a time of epic prosperity and technological advancement. Frederick Pohl's book, where we are handing out consumption stamps, should have been a reality 10 years ago, where we're saying, hey, poor people, you've got to eat, this much food a month, or you've got to wear out this many pairs of jeans a month. Like, that's the level of production and capability that we have, the level of technological advancement that we have. But the government, to create crafty numbers that persuade you to vote for them, it's just incredible what they do. They blow things up, they throw things into the ocean, they pay their friends to do nothing, and then there you go. That's it. They don't fix old buildings; they knock them into the ground, and then they pay to have them rebuilt. They don't fix they do fix old bridges, but they tear them all the way out and build them back in. That's it's this weird. Oh, Kevin, we got to get off the air. I've
It
lost
it
my mind.
creates jobs, Tim. That's really all
Jobs,
we need.
yes, it's a
It's all
jobs
about
program.
jobs.
Good paying jobs.
All right. Well, on that note, I think we're gonna call it a night.
All right, brother.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Have a good night,
Thanks
folks.
everybody for being here. Oh,
All right.
Brian Lusso, I hope you feel better, man. Thanks for being here. Good to see you again.
All right. Feel better, Brian.